Hey guys, Dr. Weiner here. I just wanted to take a second to address a concept that we've heard a bit on the news in regards to Demi Lovato about this idea of California sober. So what the concept is and the way that she's been using it is this idea that she has a well-documented history of addiction and overdose. And what she's saying is that California sober means that she's not using harder drugs like opioids or cocaine or methamphetamine, but she is using things like alcohol and marijuana, and implying that that is better and that that is okay in some way, and that this is somehow quote unquote harm reduction, being that she is using less harmful substances. And there's like layers on layers of issues with this that I think is just really important that we level on. So first off, harm reduction absolutely is a thing, and harm reduction absolutely is a valuable concept. What it essentially gets at is the idea of if someone's not ready to stop doing an addictive behavior, or any behavior for that matter, to do it in a way that causes the least amount of lasting harm. So great examples of effective harm reduction are safe injection facilities, where someone has less of a chance of dying from an embolism, or they're using clean needles. Basically they're less likely to overdose, less likely to get HIV, less likely to get hepatitis. Another example of harm reduction would be if someone's drinking, teaching them how to drink in a way that's least likely to cause alcohol poisoning. So say, for example, not mixing energy drinks and alcohol, that sort of thing. Harm reduction sometimes there's like an overlap in the Venn diagram with the idea of moderation, being that if you are moderating your use or using less, then you are doing less harm to yourself. And there is even some evidence to support that as well. Not everybody can do it, particularly not if you have a physiological dependency on a drug, including alcohol. It's really hard to do that sometimes, but it can definitely be effective for some people. The issue, though, with publicizing and promoting California sober, there's a few big issues with this. The first is it's implicitly saying that it's okay and is not a problem to use alcohol and marijuana, and that is a huge problem. It's a huge issue to message out to kids. Alcohol kills 95,000 people per year is now the new number. Marijuana is associated with a lot of really negative brain-related outcomes and productivity and life-related outcomes, particularly in young people who say, for example, look up to pop stars. And so it's a big issue when you're basically saying, I don't have to worry about these drugs, I'm only going to worry about these other drugs. From a public health perspective, it is a big problem, particularly when you're calling it almost like what you'd call, like you're making it trendy, you're glamorizing it. You're like, well, everybody's doing it, or this is what we do in California, and this counts as, quote unquote, being sober, which is a construct that you can define in a lot of different ways. But again, from the outside view, from the societal view, you're basically creating a permission structure for anybody, and particularly for young people, to look at those substances and say, this is okay, this is safe, when they are not. So that's a big issue. Now, from an addiction recovery point of view, the professionals oftentimes do not recommend that you start using other intoxicating substances if you have an addiction, because you're basically beating down the same behavioral pathway that you were with the other substance. That being, you're numbing out with a substance to deal with your problems, or you're pairing a substance with something pleasurable all the time, and you've got this association that you build. And the problem is that, one, you might just end up getting addicted to these other addictive substances instead. That alone can be a problem. But if you are impaired on anything, what happens? Your inhibitions go down, your judgment goes down. So the chances that you have a relapse in the substances that you were trying to avoid goes up. So you're not fixing that underlying issue where you're either coping with your problems with addictive, intoxicating substances, and or you're always pairing it with pleasurable events, and you can't get to this healthy, sustainable place where you're not reliant on these substances to relax, to have fun. It's not going to get you there if you're still doing that every time, just substituting one new addictive drug in for another. And so again, I want to make it really clear, there's a place for harm reduction. There's a construct, it has a lot of validity, but going out there and calling that either harm reduction or glamorizing it with a term like California sober, normalizing the use of these products and getting intoxicated is not helpful from a public health standpoint. And it's just critical that we message that out. Obviously, I don't have a platform like Demi Lovato, so it's harder to get the word out. But hopefully, if we all talk about this and we all let people know, hey, actually, she's doing something that's legitimately pretty risky, and the idea also creates this wave that can harm young people. Hopefully there's going to be enough pushback there. Again, not to stigmatize use, not to say that there's something inherently wrong with people who use alcohol, or even that she's not going to be able to sustain this. Maybe she can't. I hope she can. I wish her the best, but don't hurt other people, please. That idea is going to hurt a lot more people than it is going to help. Saying, well, I can just use alcohol and be fine, or I can just use marijuana and be fine. We don't have evidence to support that. And if anything, what we know in treatment is that doing those things makes it more likely that you're going to end up right back where you started. So thanks if you took the time to get to the end of this video. I hope it was helpful. Spread the word. It's really important. California sober should not be a thing. Let's retire that phrase. Let's retire that word. If you don't want to use heroin, don't use heroin. If you don't want to use cocaine, don't use cocaine. But don't treat alcohol and marijuana like they're meaningless. They're not.